Hi, my name is Gigi Parker Hudnall, and I am your instructor for Drama 1310. And I'm going to be doing a video lecture for, I'm in my son's room, by the way. That's why you see the dinosaurs and walls and stuff like that. He moved out, so he left a bunch of junk over there. So explaining my whereabouts or whatever. But I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to be doing a video lecture on chapter 1, which is the nature of the theater. I'm going to go ahead and share my screen and share the PowerPoint, and hopefully it behaves. So chapter 1, the nature of theater. How does theater work? Where did it come from? All these kind of things. This is what we're going to be talking about. So how and when did theater originate? The truth is that we're uncertain. Nobody really knows for sure. There are some people that think maybe tribal and religious use. Even today, when preachers get up in front of people, there's a bit of theatricality to it. So they think that maybe back, in ancient times when this was going on, that kind of led itself to the theater, the shamans and the priests and the rabbis and whatever other beings that there were that were trying to get people to pay attention to, the gods and the religions and things like that, that there was a bit of theatricality to it. Also, storytelling. Even today, I can imagine the caveman going, the fish was this big, I'm talking about the woolly mammoths and stuff like that. So the first exaggerations as well. So we get a bit of storytelling, and storytelling leading itself into, I'm going to act this out. Come on, let's act out how we took down the big woolly mammoth. Things like that. But nobody really knows for sure. However, we have put a date on what we believe our origins of the theater, the way that we present it today, are. And so we believe that it received its distinct identity as we know it today in ancient Greece about 2,500 years ago. So 5th century BCE, 5 centuries before Christ. We believe we have documentation of plays and theater and a whole lot of things that help us to know what went on in ancient Greece. And then we can follow the thread of how it came over to us today from there. So that's why we talk about it an awful lot. And we're going to delve into it, I think, in a couple of chapters. We're going to really talk a lot about how it came from ancient Greece and what we did there, what they did there. Have theater and actors always been respected? I don't think we respect them now. Sometimes we do. Big movie stars or famous people, sometimes we respect. And most of the time we try to look at the gossip magazines and see what they're doing that we can pick apart. But as far as actors, if each of you go home and you tell your family right now, I have decided that I know what my path is in life. I'm going to be an actor. See how well they respect you. They might support you. My parents did and went, okay, but what are you going to do to make money? So actors in theater have not always been respected, and sometimes more than others. So as a matter of fact, in the 5th through 10th century AD, they call this like the Dark Ages, complete theater. There were no buildings. It was reduced to small bands of traveling performers that were passing the hat, trying to collect money to make money for food so they could go on to the next town and do theater as well. There were no theater buildings, and actors were not considered respectable people. So there's that. Was theater ever illegal? Why, as a matter of fact, it was. In England, when we think of Puritans, we think of Puritans in America, but there were Puritans in England, and that's why they came over to America, so they could continue being Puritans. So in England, in Puritan England, between 1642 and 1660, it was actually illegal to be an actor, to do theater. You could be arrested for acting. It was morally unacceptable work, and it tempted people away from honest work. So if you were acting, you weren't really doing anything, you were just playing around. It wasn't really a lot of work. And therefore, these ditches weren't being dug or whatever. So come on over to this side of the pond here in America. In colonial New England, it was actually considered lying because the plays were fictional, which makes me think, did they think that books were lying because they were fictional? But then again, most of the people at that time were not literate. So there's that. And the only book they owned was the Bible, and they probably believed verbatim every word that was in there, even the songs, that were made up. And, anyhow, they didn't believe in fiction. So, as well as an acceptable form of entertainment, what else did at least some people from all periods believe? At least some people in every age that there was believed that theater was a truthful reflection of human behavior. Art is a reflection of our humanity. When people paint, they paint something that is meaningful to them. And then many, many years later, somebody else can look at it and try to interpret that meaning. So if you think of visual art that way, the performing arts are that way. When someone composes a symphony or a ballet, they're doing it because they have these feelings and they want to share these feelings with other humans. It's part of our behavior to share with each other. And so theater specifically is a reflection of what we do. Even from the caveman, acting out how we took down the woolly mammoth, that was a truthful reflection of their human behavior, of what they had done. Even when people are acting and doing comedy and making fun of things, we know they're making fun of things, but it's still how people behave, how humans behave. Okay, so what are the 3 basic elements of theater? By the way, all of these questions should be on your study guides. So if you're following along with your study guides, you should be able to answer all of your questions by, looking at the questions I have here and then going through your study guides. And hopefully all of this will prepare you, this and reading your text, for the quizzes at the end of the chapter. So the 3 basic elements of theater. The first is what is performed. Is it a play? It is a scenario, a scene. Is it a plan? Sometimes when they're doing improv theater, they say, okay, well, I'm going to do this, 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 and this. And even if all the words aren't written out, at least you have a plan that you're going off of. So, excuse me, this is A Midsummer Night's Dream by William Shakespeare. What is it that's being performed? What play? What scene? What are we performing? Then it's the performance. And this includes the processes of the production, all of the processes from creating the costumes to the actors and the directors and the lighting and the sound, all sorts of things that all encompasses the performance. So we have what are we going to perform, the performance, but that's not theater. You still need one more thing to make theater happen. And that's an audience, the people that perceive it. If you do not have an audience, you do not have theater. You have people acting for themselves. But unless there's an audience to receive it, it's not really theater. So the audience is a huge important part. So we have what is performed, the play or whatever. We have the performance, the person on stage acting, and then we have the audience, the person that perceives it. Okay, the what. From your text, how does the critic, Eric Bentley, define theater? So what he says is A performs B for C. And this is one of those questions that will probably end up being on your midterm and final and stuff like that. So A is the actor. B is the script or scenario. And C is the audience. Again, we need all 3 of these things. A performs B for C. Okay, the most common definition of theater is a staged performance of a written text. We can all agree with that, right? It's a staged performance of something that's written down, a written text. That's the most common definition. Are there other types of theater? Is stand-up comedy theater? I would say so. As is juggling, acrobatics, improv, pantomime, vaudeville, musical plays, and dramas. All of it is type of theater. So you go, you're an audience member, you sit in the seat, and you're there to be entertained. Okay, so then we will talk later. Is opera theater? Oh, kind of, sort of. Musicals are theater, and musicals are almost opera, but not quite. And opera takes on a few extra things that theater doesn't, but it still has a lot of the same elements, as does ballet, as does I see this acrobat here, and I think Cirque du Soleil. That's a performance that has lighting, that has costumes, that has people impersonating and doing other things, being characters. So it's very interesting, the gambit of what can be considered theater and where the blurred lines are. Okay, more of the what. The purposes of modern theatrical productions. There are two purposes for why we go to the theater, why people write theater or perform theater. The first is to entertain, right? People want to be entertained. The second is to provoke thought or action about significant issues. Sometimes people write something because they want you to think. So last semester at SAC, we performed Cabaret, and Cabaret takes place right at the beginning of World War II. And pretty much everybody's happy and having a great time in Berlin, and then the Nazis kind of come over. So the entire point of that play was to entertain, but it was also to get you to think about what things can go away if a totalitarian regime takes over. So, so there are two aspects of theater. Sometimes people go to the theater to be entertained, and sometimes they go to learn. Sometimes playwrights write theater to entertain, and sometimes people write theater to provoke thought or action about the issues that they want you to think about. John Millington Synge said, quote, "We should not go to the theater as we go to a pharmacy, but as we go to dinner, where the food we need is taken with pleasure and excitement," unquote. So basically, you shouldn't go like you're going grocery shopping, he's saying. When you go to the theater, you should relish everything that you see. Peter Brooks says, the basic function of the theater is to be anti-government, anti-establishment, and anti-social, unquote. Two different thoughts here. One critic says that we need to be to go to the theater and embrace it with pleasure and excitement. And then Peter Brooks says, no, it's supposed to be anti-government, anti-establishment, anti-social, so that we can get people to think about these things that are important. Two different schools of thought. The performance itself. So the performance is a fleshing out of a written text or plan through the application of theatrical processes. So acting and all of the things that accompany it are the theatrical processes. And when we're talking about that, we're talking about the memorizing of lines, the where they move on stage, the blocking, the lighting and the sets and the costumes and all of the things that accompany the theatrical process. Excuse me. The space where it's performed. Theater can actually occur in many, many different spaces, and we're going to talk about that, I think, in the next section. But it could be a theater. It could be a street, like here they are in the middle of a street. It could be a park or a nightclub. It could seat fewer than 100 people. I've actually been in a theater just like this. I may have actually been in this theater. Um, I lived in LA for a while, and that kind of looks like one of the theaters that we used to go to, but it's a theater. There are seats and there is a flat place to perform, and people perform there and utilize it. So you could have a teeny tiny theater, or like in ancient Greece, they sat up to 20,000 people in the seating area. The arrangements, it could surround the platform. They could be sitting in rows facing the platform, or it can be in any other audience configuration. This down here is a picture of a performance happening. It looks like in a nightclub or a restaurant. There's tables and there's performers moving in and around the tables. So it's not as easily defined as maybe some other things are. But theater can take place in many, many different settings. Excuse me. The performance continued. So who may participate in a performance? Well, theater is a collaborative art. You'll hear me say that a lot. You need a lot of people to put together a performance. It takes a lot of talented people to make a show happen. My husband is a techie. And in the theater, those are the people that do all the sets and the lights and all the technical things that happen behind the scenes. I started out as an actor and a director. And my husband looked at me one day and said, "You may be on stage, but unless I turn the lights on, no one will see you." So it takes a lot of important people to make a show happen. You know, they say it takes a village to raise a child. It takes the rest of the village to put on a theater performance. So it could include people like playwrights, directors, actors, designers, and technicians, people who turn on the sound and turn on the lights. Musicals, if you're doing a musical, it also includes a whole nother slew of people like composers, instrumentalists, people who play the music, singers, choreographers, and dancers. Spectacle. The word spectacle means everything you can see on stage. It includes everything, including costumes, props, scenery, and lighting. It actually also includes sound, but it's, you know, when you're thinking of spectacle, you think everything you can see. I think everything I can use my spectacles to look at, right? Okay, the performance continued. Some people may like the performance and some people may hate it. Okay, some people may find it entertaining and some people may find it boring. Everybody has different tastes, right? So you never know with a piece of theater how it's going to affect people. Peter Brooks, from his book, The Empty Space, said, quote, "I can take any empty space and call it a bare stage. A man walks across this empty space while someone else is watching him, and that's all that's needed for an act of theater to be engaged." So if someone is watching someone else across an empty space, that can be theater. There's your empty space. Okay, the audience. So the people that are going to go and enjoy or learn from this experience, theater is not for individuals, as is art or literature. When you're reading a book, excuse me, I have a little tickle in my throat. When you're reading a book, usually it's you reading it by yourself. There are times when several other people are reading the book. They are also, I'm sorry, reading it for themselves. Art, when you look at a piece of art, it's how you yourself interpret that piece of art. So it's for individuals. But theater is not like that. Theater is meant for a group of people to view it all at the same time. Theater is incomplete until an audience receives it and experiences it. Again, if we have that same person walk across that bare space, but there's nobody to watch them, it's not theater. Audience is the crucial piece for this. So the audience forms a temporary community. You're all in it together, right? When you're sitting in a room of people, say you're sitting in your classroom and you have a live class with a live teacher, all of you are experiencing the same thing at the same time, and you become sort of a community, an unspoken community. Everybody in the theater, all the audience that is viewing that particular show at that particular time has formed a temporary community. They all see the same thing. They all see it at the same time. If an actor slips and falls on stage, that's not supposed to happen. That particular audience are the only ones that saw it. They have something now in common that nobody else who's seen that show has seen. So the audience gives the performers immediate feedback, usually through applause or laughter, or sometimes a stunned silence. But the performers know whether or not they have affected the audience. And I can tell you, performers rely on an audience. I saw a show not that long ago. I happened to see a dress rehearsal, and I turned to the director and I said, all they need now is an audience, because the actors need the energy of the audience. They need to hear people laughing at the laugh lines or gasping at the, big reveal or whatever it is, so that they can feel that even though they are in their character, they can feel the energy of the audience when they're performing. The audience may also affect each other. So if one person starts laughing at something, it kind of makes the rest of the audience feel, oh, it's okay to laugh. They might have been smiling, but somebody laughs out loud, and that gives like the rest of the audience permission to laugh out loud. So, and it affects the performers in a good way and in bad ways. So, there have been shows that I have been involved with where people have laughed at parts where they're not supposed to laugh. And they have laughed at, parts where they're supposed to cry, or they're very quiet and bored when they're supposed to be laughing. And so that can throw the performer off as well. So they respond to the audience, and to the audience, living this moment with them. So in good ways and in bad ways, it can affect the acting. So what are motives for people who attend the theater? Why do people attend the theater? Okay, to be entertained, to challenge accepted values, okay? To raise provocative issues, to advocate action about political or social issues. There are many themes in many different plays because there are many different people in the world. And many different people in the world write many different plays in the world. And so all of these are motives for people who attend the theater. Some do it just to be entertained, and some do it because they want to be challenged. They want to open up their mind about different things. They want to advocate for action on different political things or social things. So there's a lot of different reasons. Okay, so the audience, there are different types of audiences. So if you are going to a Broadway theater, and even Broadway here in San Antonio is not all that cheap, it's a very expensive ticket. If you're going to off-Broadway, like in New York City, they have Broadway and then they have off-Broadway. So the off-Broadway shows are less expensive. If you're going to a Broadway theater, that's the ones that appeal to the masses. We will talk about it in the musical theater section, but there's a whole lot of Disney, right? They're trying to get everybody in. If they're off Broadway, they can take more risks. They can do more risque things. They can do more politically charged things. And they're not worried about a flop because they haven't put that much money into it like the Broadway shows have. The Broadway theater, it's not too edgy. It's rather mainstream. But off Broadway, it can be really provocative. It can be really interesting. There can be a lot more diversity, a lot more challenging sorts of things that can happen in an off Broadway setting. Above else, theater should entertain. Okay, you should be entertained. But sometimes when things are presented that we feel should not be put on stage, for example, nudity or sensitive social issues, things like that, we may be put off or too offended to be entertained. Let me give you an example of this. I just had a student who was taking an online class, and he wasn't in San Antonio. And so he was supposed to go see a performance, go to attend a live theater event, as you're all supposed to do for this class. Excuse me. And he was in Ohio. And he asked me if he could go see a production of Hair, the musical. Hair, the musical that was written in the late 1960s, that was all about protesting Vietnam, and that I was going to grow my hair long, and the establishment was bad. Well, something I knew about Hair that he did not was that there is nudity in Hair, and it is not just something passing. It is in the middle of this song at the highlight between the first and second act, the highlight of the end of the first act. They all just take off their clothes and stand there naked singing whatever this song is. I have not seen it. I have heard about it. But he wrote in his critique that he was very surprised about that. And I'm sure that it was done originally for shock value. But when things happen like that, he said some people left at intermission and didn't come back. And I can understand that. But sometimes we might be too offended to be entertained. So that's an example of when that can happen. So we should be there to entertain. It's okay to try to get messages across, but we need to be careful as theater people to not make things so offensive that people don't get the message. So people staring, going, huh? What? I don't get it. What? Why are they doing that? I don't get it. Okay, so now we're going to talk about the difference between popular culture and elitist culture. This is in your text as well. So popular culture is culture that is enjoyed by the masses. These are things that most people like. Pop music, it's popular because most people like it. That's what pop means, popular. Elitist culture, they believe that only a few with super sensitivity can appreciate art. You can't appreciate it. You don't know what art is. You couldn't possibly, you don't have the nose for it or whatever. In popular culture, it caters to broad, general public. I said Disney kinds of things. Elitist culture caters to a smaller group with more demanding standards that the general public doesn't know about. I think of the Academy of Dramatic Arts, people who win the Oscar, the Academy. I'd like to thank the Academy. Yeah, I've been practicing my speech for many years. They haven't called me yet, but one of these days. Guess I have to do a movie first, but that's beside the point. Yeah, the things that I have done are probably not up there being nominated. But the Academy was actually created so that it could reward art in theater, which is why comedies never win and super big smash hits never win. They believe they hold themselves to a higher standard. Okay, elitist culture. Popular culture, they mostly listen to pop music. Elitist culture, they mostly listen to concert hall music, symphony type music. Popular culture, they watch TV sitcoms. Elitist culture, they watch the PBS, Masterpiece Theater, or whatever it is. Popular culture, enjoy and respond to advertising art. Where elitist culture, they appreciate art shown in galleries. Okay, I have to tell you, I went to the Metropolitan Museum of Art in New York City, and there was a wall. And I mean, it was about a 30-foot long piece of artwork that from basically to the ceiling to the floor. So they probably had, 15-foot high, 20-foot high ceilings or whatever to the floor, and like 30 feet long. It was just a canvas painted red. That's it. It was all the same color. Not even a little bit here, a little bit there. It was all just red. I'm sure it meant something. I had my son take a picture of me in front of it because I was wearing a red shirt. And I wanted him to get from the back, so I looked like I just my head and arms appeared. But so obviously I was not in the elitist culture there because I did not appreciate that type of art. I did not have the sophistication for it. Okay, elitist culture. Popular culture, the theater they attend are mostly musical comedies, which I am fond of. That's not necessarily what I like to perform, but it's what I like to go see. Elitist culture, the theater they attend are mostly the not-for-profit regional theaters, the people that are doing edgy things, the people that are doing political things, or if it's the weirder, the better, right? More weird, weirder, weird. I think weirder is a word. But anyhow, if it's weird, they like it and they say, oh, it's art. So again, that's elitist culture versus popular culture. And I believe that you might even have an essay question based on that. So know these differences between popular culture and elitist culture. Okay, now let's talk about football. Good old football. Theater and sports have kind of been side by side friends forever. They utilize a lot of the same spaces. So you might go see a concert at the AT&T Center where you have music or something like that. You might also go see Disney on Ice there. And then I know that when my kids were little, we went and saw like the Wiggles and Sesame Street Live and, things like that there that were theater. And then at the same time, you might turn around and go watch a Spurs game. And I know it's not called the AT&T Center anymore. I apologize. I think it's the Frostbank Center, maybe. Whatever. It's the same space. So we share the same space in many different times. Back in Shakespearean time, they shared the same theatrical spaces. There would be a play one night, and then they would have like bear baiting the next night where they would like taunt a bear and somebody would fight against the bear. Okay. I think it's a lot like, well, it's not like cockfighting because cockfighting, they fight against each other. Bear fighting, they were fighting a person. So I don't know. But what are the differences and similarities between theater and football or theater and sports? So do they pit one side against the other? In theater, yes, often that you do. You have a protagonist and you have an antagonist, right? You have a good guy and a bad guy, or a good guy versus the mean things of the world. There is usually you are rooting for someone in some way in theater. In football, there are two different sides, two different teams, and they are one side against each other. So that checks on both sides. Do they build suspense? If it's a good theater show, it does. You like waiting to see what happens next, what happens next, what happens next. If it's a good football game, the same thing. Oh my goodness, it's the Super Bowl. They've got, a minute and a half left. And, if this one team can get a field goal, then they will tie the game. And they'll have to go into overtime. That's suspenseful. You are kind of waiting to see what's going to happen. So yes, both of them can build suspense. Do they reach an outcome? Yes. Theater eventually ends. Football games, all sports events eventually end. There is an ending to them. Okay. Do they have understood conventions? So conventions are things that we accept. Okay. Let me give you an example. A convention in the theater is when the lights start to dim, the audience, we know, be quiet, the show's about to start. Okay, that's a theatrical convention. So some of the conventions that theater has, we know that when we go to the theater, whatever is happening is fictional, right? This is a place where fictional events occur. And we're okay with it. We know that right now that this is not happening in real life, that this is something, even if it's a reflection of a historical event, it's not happening right now. It's a recreation. We know that in football, they have a playing field. We go and we look at the field, we see the stripes, we know what they mean. That's the 10-yard line, that's 20-yard line, that's the 30-yard line. For those of you who don't know football, I apologize. This is just how the book is presenting it. For theater, we have costumes and scenery. When we see people on stage, we accept that that's probably not their own clothes. And even if it is, it's supposed to be creating them to look like someone different. We understand that that scenery is supposed to be representative of wherever they are, that we are not actually looking in someone's living room, that that couch is on a stage. We understand these conventions. In football, we understand that this side's wearing green and this side's wearing blue. And that's how we tell the difference between the teams, that they have uniforms on, and that there's a certain number of players that are on each team or on the field at the same time. These are conventions of football. In theater, sometimes people sing their lines, and we accept this as someone talking to us. Even though they're singing, we listen to what they're saying as if they were speaking to us. In football, there are rules of the game. We know that a touchdown is a certain number of points and that they have to get the ball through the goal. And the field goal, they kick the ball over the goal post, and all these different rules. These are called conventions. So these are rules that we accept that most people know. Now, I remember being in high school and not knowing a thing about football, and my boyfriend loved football. So we'd go to the game and I was actually trying to understand it. And then I just turn around and walk around and talk to my friends. But when people do understand it, there are certain conventions and things that everybody understands. There's very rarely a tutorial in any of these things. You experience it when you go. You go to the theater, the lights dim, everybody's quiet, so you know you should be quiet too. So these are different characteristics of theater and of football. We have shared characteristics and then things that are different. What is art? This is an interesting question because the definition of art has changed over the years. So in the Book of Trades, the Library of the Useful Arts, until the 18th century, it was defined as the systematic application of known principles to achieve some predetermined result. So it was the art of sword making. Okay, I know how to forge this steel and I'm going to make a sword. I'm going to make a wagon wheel. An art was the art of being a doctor. I'm going to take this knowledge, this applied knowledge, and achieve this predetermined result. Now this definition is used for the useful arts, not just art. The useful arts are medicine, politics, persuasion, things like that, as opposed to the fine arts. So which are the fine arts then? So fine arts, after the 18th century, is defined as literature, drama, painting, sculpture, architecture, music, dance, cinema, and photography. Those things are considered fine arts. And actually at SAC, we have our department now encompasses all of these things, including cinema. The radio, film, and television department is under our fine arts umbrella. I don't even remember. I think they're not calling it fine arts anymore. They're calling it something else. But it includes all of these things. Drama and painting and sculpture and architecture and music and dance and cinema and photography. So it's really interesting. Today, when we're saying when we're talking about art, what are we talking about today? So what is art? Art is one way that the human beings seek to understand their world. I mentioned this before. Art, there are some people that feel that dance is their life, and that's how they express themselves, and that's how they interpret their world. There are some people, I know just from talking to people, that think that basketball is their life, and basketball is how they interpret their world. To them, that is their art. So I think art can be very subjective, but when we're thinking of the fine arts and we're defining the fine arts, most people produce art so that they can communicate their feelings to other human beings, and they can make themselves understand the world better, and hopefully other people understand them as well. Okay, Samuel Taylor Coleridge. What did he mean when he says that we view a play with a willing suspension of disbelief, which sounds like a double negative, and it kind of is. Basically, it means that when you walk into the theater and you see somebody dead on stage, you are not going to call 911, right? You have agreed just by going to the theater to suspend your disbelief, and we're going to pretend that I'm watching this and I believe for the purposes of that play, that person is dead. Okay, that's okay. I don't think it's real. I know it's not real. But I'm going to go ahead and buy into whatever world it is that I'm looking at. So we know the events of the play are not real, but we agree for the moment not to disbelieve them. Okay, we're just going to believe that that person's dead, but we're not going to call 911 because we know that they're not really dead. Okay. It's also called aesthetic distance. So if you see that phrase, it's the same thing as the willing suspension of disbelief. I'm going to suspend my disbelief. I'm going to see that person dead on stage. I'm going to believe that for that particular show, for this particular time, I'm going to believe the events that are happening. I'm going to just buy into the story, knowing in the back of my mind that it's not real. Aesthetic distance. We know it's not real. What is empathy? So empathy is when we feel what the characters on stage feel. I'm sure this has happened to you, maybe not in a play if you haven't been to too many plays, but in a movie or in a book, that you felt what the character felt. So it's that feeling of involvement that allows us to connect to the play and to the characters. We feel what they feel. When somebody is dying on stage that we care about, we might cry, right? So that's empathy. Empathy is our feeling that we connect, we feel what that character feels. We understand what they're going through. And when we do things like that, it helps us to empathize with people around us as well. When we can connect to someone in that way, whether it be on stage or in a movie or whatever, when you can connect, that helps you to also empathize with other people around you, thereby making your world a broader place. Okay, theater as art has these special qualities. Lifelikeness. It comes the closest to real life. It holds a mirror up to nature, much more than, say, visual arts or ballet. If you're going to a play, especially a realistic play, there are people involved. And so it looks most like real life. So it's lifelikeness. It's ephemeral, ephemerality. Ephemeral means, okay, that snap might be recorded, but you're only hearing a recording of it. I can not hear it again. Once the moment is gone, it's gone. As soon as it's experienced, it becomes a part of the past. It can never be recaptured exactly the same. The dandelion, once you blow it, You can't take the little pieces and stick them back onto the dandelion, right? Um, you experience it and it's gone. You can't see the same play twice. You can go see the same, you know, play, the same people performing, but every single showing is going to be a little bit different. Maybe one has more energy. Maybe, one time the actor walks the wrong way or slips on a banana peel. Um, different things happen in shows all the time. I've seen shows many, many times, the same cast, the same performance, and it's never the same twice, never. Objectivity. We see what characters feel as well as what they do. And many times we see both sides. We can empathize with both sides of whatever's going on. We can be objective. We can take a step back and go, oh, he probably shouldn't have done that. I understand why he did that, but he probably shouldn't have done that. If he hadn't have done that, things would have probably been better. So we can objectify what's going on. Complexity of means, which basically means there's a whole lot of things that come together to form the theater. We used sound, we use movement, we use place, we use dress, we use lighting. It draws on all the other arts. So like, visual art, there's people to do the settings and the backdrops. There's lighting, there's costuming, there's makeup artists. There's all sorts of people that come together and, and the actors themselves. A lot of times there's singers and dancers, and we use choreographers and vocal coaches and musicians, and it draws on so many other things. So it's complex as the way that it presents itself. Complexity of means it uses many different things, and it's a complex thing that you end up actually seeing. And lastly, immediacy. This is kind of like ephemerality, but it's the simultaneous presence of live actors and the spectators in the same room at the same time. What you feel is immediate. Ephemerality means when it's past, it's past. But immediacy means it's happening right here, right now, right in front of you at the same time. If the actor, again, jumps up and does a flip, and you see it, you were there in the room and you saw it when he did it that time. So immediacy. Okay, now here's another future essay question. What's the difference between theater and film and TV? And I have worked on both of these, and I can tell you they are very different. And I have met actors that have worked in the theater that swear, I could never do film. I could never do, any kind of filmed media. I could never do cinema. I could never do television. And then I've met people on the cinema television side that said, oh, I could never stand in front of a live audience and do it. No, I could never. And to me, that's absolutely crazy, because an actor is an actor. But there are different feelings that you get. If you are a theater performer, there are fewer audience members than if you did something on film and TV. If you're going to the theater, even if it's on Broadway, Phantom of the Opera was on Broadway for 35 years. It ended last year. 35 years is a long time. I saw it a couple of times. But still, if you added up all the people in those audiences compared to how many people could see the film in that same time period, film and TV can be seen by millions. So much fewer theater audience. And again, if it doesn't last on Broadway, or it comes with a very limited run or something like that, they're not really, not that many people can see them compared to what film and TV can be seen. However, it's again very different. Most of the actors in theater are not known well. When people watch the Tony Awards, I watch the Tony Awards sometimes, and I don't know anyone on there unless they have also acted in film and television, because I don't frequent Broadway. I've been to Broadway a couple of times, and I've seen a few shows, and you'll hear me talk about those because they were really wonderful. But I'm not somebody who frequents there, nor do I know all the actors and people. But the actors on film and TV, they're famous, right? We know who they are. Most of you right now, if I say Tom Cruise, you know who Tom Cruise is. Okay. But I can't even think of an actor's name on Broadway that you probably wouldn't know because I don't know them very well. Seth Martin, maybe? No, maybe. There's this guy I listen to. Um, um, I can't even remember. Catherine Petty. Catherine Petty, she does the on Broadway station on the Sirius XM FM, which is the only reason that I know who she is. Otherwise, I don't even really know who she is. I'm sure she's done many wonderful things, but I don't know them. When you're at the theater, you can see the entire stage. You can see everybody on stage. If you're at a theater that hasn't done this very well, you can sometimes even see backstage. On film and TV, you only see what the camera wants you to see. Right now, I'm sitting in my son's room, and right now, you can see, part of the wall. If you were here in the room with me, you could see all of it. Okay, so the audience only sees what the camera allows. In the theater, there's a continuous interaction between the performer and the spectator. The energy, like I said, that flows from the actors to the audience, there's always that kind of energy, that kind of interaction. In film and TV, there is no interaction at all. Whatever they film and then you see later, they don't know that you've seen it. They don't feel your energy. They film something, and the actors do this all the time. They don't know if that show that they're doing, it's going to be seen by millions or it's going to flop the first week. They just don't know. Each performance is different in the theater, as we've discussed, and all performances are the same on film and TV. Because, also they film it several different times and then they only take the best one. And if they do it wrong, they can do over, right? They can redo it. They can refilm it. And that does not happen in the theater. You do something wrong, you say a wrong line, you kind of have to go with it. And I have been there, and it is very scary. And trying to find your place again and trying to make sure everybody remembers the right line. It's quite an intense feeling. But again, that doesn't happen in film and TV because they can just cut and redo it. So audiences must use their imagination in the theater. When you walk into the theater, you sit in the theater, you're in a theater. You have to imagine that if I tell you that the play is happening in France, you're going to believe me and try to imagine that we are in France. If you do film and TV, and we say that it's in France, they're probably going to shoot it on location in Paris. You're going to see the Eiffel Tower in the background. You're going to know where they are by what they film. So it's very different in film and TV. And in theater, the audience, again, must use their imagination. Okay, of all the arts, theater has the greatest potential humanizing force because it asks us to imaginatively enter into somebody else's life and see as they see. They want you to walk in someone else's shoes. They want you to feel what someone else feels. And in a world of violence, being able to understand and feel for others cannot be overestimated. This is a skill that we should all have. We should all be able to try to walk in somebody else's shoes, see what it's like for someone else before we judge them. To experience what it means to be human ought to be a primary goal for all in the theater. Humanity is its subject, and human beings are its primary medium of delivery. We use humans to show humanity to other humans. So that kind of should be a primary goal for us. And here's your thought for contemplation. What would your life be like without any art? Would it affect you? And what do you consider art? And if you think about all the, not just theater, but film and television and streaming and radio and artwork and dance, it's pretty empty. So many of people in education think of the arts as frills that can be cut, and they don't see a concrete benefit to funding arts in schools. And what do most parents think when they hear their children say, Mom and Dad, I want to be an actor, dancer, singer, an artist when I grow up? They go, aha, that's nice. Oh my gosh, how are they going to eat? Okay, and I'm sure that's what, actually, I know that's what my parents said. My dad said, don't you want to be a teacher or something? But no, I never want to teach. I find myself back here teaching. So you just never say never. That's all I can say. But I'm teaching it because I love it so much and because I lived it. But I will say that in schools, when they cut art funding in schools, it affects learners. It affects, children, students, because there are many types of intelligence. And by not teaching the arts, we're not stimulating all the different types of intelligence. And therefore, some students may not be reaching their full potential. So there are some students that might make sense of math through music, okay, because music is very mathematical. And some students that need to be able to express themselves in art, in acting, in dance, so that they can, feel that they are achieving their potential. So when we cut arts funding in schools, it affects everybody. And that's all, folks. This has been Mod 1, which was Chapter 1 in the Essential Theater. So I'm going to try to be doing these videos to keep up with you guys, and hopefully it helps in your studying. If you have any questions at all, please email me. All right, take care. Going to, if I get this.